Hello, hello, everybody. It's me again, Deneen L. Garrett, the creator and host of Women of Color and Intimate Conversation. And again, this is a kickback. So, this is the third episode where we're just kicking back, having conversation, changing things up a little bit from what you all may be used to. So, today's guest is a CPA. She's an author, and a book is behind her. CEO, mom, Susanne Mariga. Susanne, tell us more about you.
Deneen, thank you for having me. First of all, I'm excited to be here with you and your audience. But I am just like you said, I'm a CPA by background. I'm actually a fractional CFO. So I work with 7 to 9 figure entrepreneurs, and I specifically help them with implementing the profit first strategy. It's literally teaching these entrepreneurs how to take their profit first, how to create intentional profitability. And I do that through the profit first methodology. And Deneen, I'm not sure if the audience knows about Profit First, but I'd be more than happy to tell them a little bit about this process.
Yeah, we will definitely get into that because I'm curious as well. And, it's about building wealth, generational wealth. So if this profit first system can help with that, we definitely want to hear about that. So today's conversation is the power of intentional living, a guide to personal growth. So during this conversation, Suzanne, what, I want you to share with us is how we can be intentional about living, right? And personal and financial growth through the systems that you've created. So, as a certified profit first professional at the mastery level, you're passionate about helping entrepreneurs maximize their revenue, grow their business, and save dollars through sound strategies, which is, pretty much what you've already shared. Why is it important to have sound tax strategies?
So I think that a lot of times, entrepreneurs they start their businesses because they love what they do. And I remember when I first started my business, one of my first clients to ever come through my door of my CPA firm, he was a middle-aged man and he brought a shoebox with him. You guys can think of the traditional accountant and the shoebox client, right? And this was him. He brought a shoebox filled with receipts. And I remember he plopped down in the chair right next to me and he said to me, he goes, "Whatever you do, I don't want to pay any taxes."
Mm,
He then proceeds to push the shoebox towards me, and I start to go through the shoebox. I'm literally unraveling receipts that have been balled up, probably put in his pocket and then thrown in a shoebox when he gets home. And I get to the bottom, and there's this piece of paper, and it's called a profit and loss. So this is his income statement, revenue and his expenses. So revenue minus expenses equals profit. And I'm looking at this and I'm seeing the receipts match up to the profit and loss statements. I know the expenses are legitimate. He is truly good at incurring expenses. And I said, "Well, sir, don't worry. You're not going to pay any taxes because you didn't make any money. You see here, your expenses exceed your revenue. It's red, right? You don't pay taxes when you didn't make any money." And he goes away, he leaves me with the shoebox, he comes back a few days later, he signs his return, he's getting something called earned income credit, so he's getting a couple $1,000s back. And, an earned income credit, if you guys are not aware, it's the credit that you get for showing up to work but not making any money.
mm,
He thinks that I did a good job. I think I did a pretty good job. And the next year he comes back and he brings the same shoebox. He's getting more, he's good to nature. He recycles, he reuses, and he plops down the same chair and he still tells me, "Whatever you do, I don't want to pay any taxes." I go through the receipts again. I get to the bottom of a new P&L, a fresh year, and I said, "Well, don't worry, sir. You're still not going to pay any taxes. Your expenses exceed your revenue. You're running at a loss, and you don't pay taxes when you didn't make any money." And so he comes back a couple days later, he gets his return, and again, he's getting earned him credit. He thinks that I did a good job. I think I did pretty good too. Third year, Deneen, he comes back again and brings the same shoebox, has the nerve to say the same joke, but this time it's different. This time I've gotten to know him a little bit better. He writes me emails at 11 o'clock at night because that's the only time that he gets to sit down and actually answers his emails. And now it's not funny because this is 3 years of running at a loss.
mm,
And I look at him, I'm like, "Sir, I plan to retire one day. And I hope you have an accountant because you're going to be working for a long time because you're not even paying into the system to get Social Security.
Oh, wow.
And and what struck me was, he wasn't unique. There were many entrepreneurs that were in the same boat. They were so focused on not paying any taxes that they were failing to achieve anything in their own personal lives. This man, his employees were obviously paid more than he was. He didn't own his own car. He was leasing a car. He was renting an apartment, right? And he literally had nothing to show for all these years of work that he was doing. And the bad thing was he wasn't even building up money in the Social Security system. And so, my passion came for creating a system where you win all around, right? You win personally. Like Deneen, you mentioned creating generational wealth. If that's important to you, you need a system in place to do that. You need process in place to create intentional wealth. And in taxes, if you're driving the Bugatti, right? You're driving a nice car, you're paying off your house, that means that you're being successful. And yes, there are ways to mitigate taxes, right? And to reduce taxes, right? But our goal at the end of the day should be ultimately to achieve the things that we started our business for, which is wealth generation and creating better lives for our children.
Yeah, and I love that you're saying that because what I'm hearing is, wrong focus, in essence, is what he and a lot of other people had and have, right? He said he didn't want to pay taxes. Well, he was achieving that, but like you said, he really didn't accomplish anything beyond that. Like, okay, you're not paying taxes, but what that also means is you're not generating income. You're probably, you said he didn't own and whatnot, right? It's so many things that we're missing out on because we're focused on that one thing, but that one thing is keeping us away from so many other things. So tell us, what is this profit first system and how does this come into play with what you're passionate about and how you're helping the entrepreneurs that you work with?
So profit first is exactly what it sounds like. It's literally paying yourself first as a business owner, right? It's creating profit right on day one. The Bureau of Labor Statistics tells us that 18% of small businesses will close their first year. 18%, 20% failure rate. 5 years, 50% of these businesses will have closed. And then by 10 years, 65% of these businesses will have closed. So the odds are against us as business owners. And what Profit First does is that it creates intentional profitability day one. So literally you are profitable on day one because you are profit first, right? It's creating a system that creates intentional profit. And I love this as we're talking about intentional conversations here, Deneen. Let's talk about intentional profitability. And Profit First works with our natural human tendencies, which is important for success, right? When we do things that are easy that we enjoy doing, we tend to be better at it, more successful at it, and we do it longer term. And Profit First works with something called Parkinson's Law. And so what Parkinson's Law tells us is that work expands to fill the time available for completion. So if you give me 2 weeks to do a project, it's going to be done in 2 weeks. Maybe like 5 hours before the deadline, but it's going to be done in 2 weeks. You give me one day to do that same project. Yes, the output might look different, but it's going to be done in one day because we as humans, we're efficient. The more time you give us, the more resources you give us, the more we're going to use, right? And Profit First works with that same phenomenon because in the business community, when money is flowing, think about PPP loans, think about ERC. I'm telling you, some of you guys had the best year of your life during COVID, right? My entrepreneurs were asking me questions, when money is flowing, they ask me questions like, Suzanne, can I expand into that new office space? I feel like this is going to be the year. This is going to be the year that I finally outgrow my current office space. That space next door is coming available. And if I don't take it now, it's not going to be there when I actually grow into it. But this is going to be my year. Or my favorite question they ask me is, Suzanne, what about that corporate car? I feel like I need a tax write-off. And I saw something on TikTok that I can get a $25,000 tax deduction if I buy that 6,000-pound gas guzzler. Is that true?
Right.
Can you help me do that? Those are the questions they ask me when money is falling from the sky, when there's PPP loan ERC.
Mm,
Now, on the other hand, when cash is not flowing, right? When money is tight, right? The questions are different. They're asking me, what expenses can I cut right now
right.
to make it through this time? Or how do I gracefully lay off some of my team members? Because right now I'm struggling to make payroll and the sales just aren't there. And the questions are different simply because the cash availability is different. And what's happening is they've been influenced unbeknownst by Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law says that when you give us more of something, we're going to use more of it. You give me more money, I'm going to use more of it. If you give me more food, we're going to Golden Corral, I'm going to eat more than if we go to order of dinner, right? And I'm working with my natural human tendency. This is how I am designed as a human being. And so what's going to happen in Profit First is we're going to create an illusion of scarcity. And we're going to create that illusion of scarcity through the use of bank accounts. You know, you guys may have heard of Dave Ramsey's system, the envelope budgeting system.
Hmm.
You know, and in Dave Ramsey's system, you know, as soon as you get your paycheck, money's allocated into an envelope according to a pre-designated purpose, right? You got an envelope for groceries, you might have an envelope for rent or mortgage in some case. You might have an envelope for dining out, but you have a envelope for every single purpose of your life. And Profit First works very similarly. However, instead of having envelopes, because we don't want any of you guys having envelopes, that would be dangerous. That would be a security risk, right? In Profit First, we're going to have bank accounts and we're going to have 5 bank accounts. And what's going to happen is all your money is going to accumulate into one bank account throughout the month. So this is called the income bank account. So all your deposits are going into this income bank account. If you've got merchant services, those deposits are going into your income bank account. And then twice a month, you're allocating to different bank accounts according to your purpose. So one of the first accounts you're going to allocate to is going to be your profit bank account. And literally, that's your profit. It's physics. If you move money into that bank account and you don't touch it, because that's the game of the rule, that's the rules, right? You don't touch money. We've moved into the profit account. You're already beating the Bureau of Labor and Statistics odds on day one because you are profitable on day one. You've allocated to a profit bank account. The next bank account that we're going to allocate to is going to be an owner's pay account. You know, so many times when I talk to business owners, I ask them, who's your most valued player? Who's that person on your team that they quit tomorrow? You're going to be like crying at your desk, okay? Like raising the offer of what they already got paid. Who is that person? And, you know, they'll tell me it's Johnny, it's Susie, it's Mike, but none of them will ever say it's themselves. But
Mm.
the reality is, if you didn't start this business, it wouldn't exist today, right? You're the thought leader behind that business. You know, the fuel of that business is your passion. Think about Steve Jobs. The day he died, Apple changed. The iPhone looks the same way it did the day that Steve Jobs died. And just like you would never allow Johnny, Susie, or Mike to go without a paycheck, you shouldn't either as a business owner. And just like you would never allow Johnny and Susie and Mike to go without a raise, you shouldn't either. And so funding that owner's pay account is crucial because we need to make sure that you are paid as the founder of the business. The next bank account that we're going to fund is going to be your tax account, right? Because like I said, Deneen, if you're driving the Bugatti, buying the fancy house, you made money.
Right.
And you may hire the best accountant in the world, but unless they are committing fraud, right, you're going to owe taxes. And so instead of worrying about how we're going to pay last year's taxes with this year's money, we're going to put away money into a tax bank account. So it's there just in case you need it. Now, of course, you're going to be using tax strategy. You're going to be meeting with your accountant throughout the year to talk about profit, estimated taxes, right? And how do we decrease our taxes by not increasing our expenses, right? But but that money's there just in case you need it.
Yeah.
And then the last bank account that you're going to fund is going to be your operating expense account. And this is the account that literally you're going to pay your bills from. This is the account that you're going to decide, can I afford to upgrade into that new office space? Can I afford to bring on that new employee and increase my payroll expense? Can I afford to buy that new MacBook, right? This is the account that you're going to decide to do that. And this is where you're going to create that illusion of scarcity. This is where you're creating that feast or that famine, right? In that OpEx bank account. And you're only going to spend money from that OpEx bank account.
Wow. So what brought you to this? Is it all the shoe boxes full of receipts that were coming through and you're like, okay, wait a minute, there's definitely a better way. There's something that we can do differently. Was that one client, was he like your catalyst to start this?
It was seeing a lot of shoe boxes that brought
Yeah.
me to that, you know, seeing a lot of shoe boxes. And
Like
I, and I'm,
unrolling all that paper, like, yeah, we're not going to continue to do this.
And also, Deneen, part of it was how do we change our communities, right? As women of
Mhm.
color, how do we change our communities? You know, I started my career in the Chicago office of Arthur Anderson. And I remember, you know, moving to Chicago or getting ready to move to Chicago. and asking some of my peers, where do I live at? Where's a good, safe neighborhood to live at? And my peers, obviously they're not women of color. They're not even people of color for most part. I mean, this is like late 90s. You can imagine what a large accounting firm would have looked like.
Right.
And
Pretty much what it
and
still looks like.
Exactly. And they met absolutely the best. They said, live over on the north side, Lincoln Park is beautiful, Gold Coast is beautiful, Lakeview is beautiful, but whatever you do, do not live on the south side or west side of Chicago.
Mm.
Now looking back, I go, what were they thinking? Telling me that. But they were just looking out for their coworker, right?
Right, right.
They're a wonderful, cool coworker. And I remember one day being bored on a Saturday, and I remember taking this bus. So any guys that are familiar with Chicago, you know what I'm talking about. This is before South Loop was gentrified.
Mm.
And I remember getting on this bus and I said, I'm just going to venture Chicago. And wherever the good Lord takes me today, this is where I am going to end up today. So I took this like Michigan Avenue bus until the bus driver told me to get off because he doesn't go any further south. And I got off and there was another bus behind it. So I got on that bus and I continued down Michigan Avenue. And what I noticed is that, it changed. It changed at Roosevelt. Instead of having your shiny stores and your little boutiques and your candy shops, suddenly you started to see less grocery stores, less commerce, boarded up windows, shopping carts that were being pushed around randomly by people. And I thought to myself, how do you change communities? How do you change communities so that you don't have Roosevelt being the dividing line? And it hit me, how do you change communities is by creating profitable businesses. When you have profitable businesses that can provide jobs that allow people to keep their heads up in any economy, you just change the wealth of that community.
Yeah. Yeah, and and as you were describing, paying yourself first, it made me think about, these systems could also apply like in your personal life, right? As far as taking care of yourself first. You are your best asset. You are with you at all times, your most important relationship, all those things. And so just like you should pay yourself first, you should also take care of yourself first. So I want the audience, those who are watching or listening, to hear this and to hear how this profit first system, which is designed around money, revenue, um, can also apply in your life, in your personal life. What are some of the challenges you face when you were creating this system or just in your work?
Right. So the system was created by an author by the name of Mike Michalowicz, Profit First. But I think in terms of implementing this system, some of the biggest challenges is that at some point you'll come to a point where you can't cut yourself into prosperity. You can't just keep cutting expenses, right? Because now you're actually harming yourself. For example, if you've got a busy schedule, adding one more client to a busy schedule is not going to help you. You need that extra pair of hands. You need that A player to join your team to make you more efficient and able to accommodate more work, right? If you're going to grow and become a 7 to 9 figure business. And at that point, you have to look at your model and you have to decide, who are you going to be as a brand? Are you going to be the bargain basement
Mm.
firm where, we'll price match wherever you go?
Yeah,
Or are you going to be known for your quality and your service? And are you going to price accordingly? Who are you going to hire? Are you going to hire the best and the brightest? Or are you going to hire who you can afford?
yeah.
I like to hire the best and the brightest. So I go back and go being intentional.
Hmm.
What needs to happen for me to be able to hire the best and the brightest? How do I need to price? How do I need to position? What is this person asking for and how do I provide that?
And that's also, in alignment with, your personal life, right? Again, with the personal growth, right? Starting with what do you want to achieve? Thinking about what that thing is and then working yourself into that. Like you said, I want quality. I want the best. So how do I achieve that? So there's such alignment and I'm loving it. So tell us about one of your most successful stories, one of your most successful interactions or outcomes with a client.
So we've had a lot of successful stories with our clients.
Good.
Definitely, if you go to my website, SusanneMariga.com, under the Work With Me tab, there's a variety of different clients that have talked about it. I think about the story that I write about with one of my clients that's actually in my book, Jane and Ed, the Virgin Hair Fantasy, for you guys that, want some good hair. They're the best chef and wig maker out there. And, to see them buy their own building, right? To see them become the first millionaires in their family, has been very, it's been an honor to be able to participate in that journey. I've had clients that bought their own buildings, instead of renting their buildings, like, I'm going to buy an asset that's going to grow over time value of money, right? And they bought their own buildings. They built it out. They bought their own farms. And, there's no greater honor seeing people change and pivot their legacies.
I love that. So you described, the profit first system, paying yourself first, the multiple bank accounts and what they're for. This podcast is for women of color, is to empower them. It's to, give them tools to live their dream lifestyles. What three things can women of color do now to be intentional about their personal financial growth or, growing a business?
I think that the first question is, what do I want out of my life?
Mhm.
And be very, very specific about it. Like, how old do I want to be when I retire and stop working? I'm all about the fire movement. Fire me, please. I sold our accounting and tax practice at the age of 46. I retired at the age of 46, technically, right? My goal was to retire by 50 or be able to retire by 50. And then I realized that I was bored. And so I take on a few fractional CFO clients. But having that ability to go, what do I want at the end of the day? Like, how long do I want to work, right? How much do I need to do that? Grab that financial calculator, figure out present value, future cash flows. How much do I need to be able to retire? And create that path going forward. So first of all, just being really gut level honest and having no shame to it. People are gonna look at you like you're gonna retire at 50. Like, what are you doing? But stand in your truth. Be absolutely honest about that. And then second of all, create that path to go and accomplish those things. I talk about profit first. Profit first is a system. It's a system to accomplish that goal of creating that wealth that allow you to retire, right? So creating a system, that identify what you want, create a system and doing it. And then just know your worth, first of all. It's you will become what you feel that you are.
Okay. Wow.
And And you have to own who you are and what you wanna be and have no shame to it.
Absolutely. So as I pointed out how the alignment with personal growth and whatnot, how it aligns with the profit first system. So what about how are you using it? Do you use it or any of the, strategy in your personal life? How does it show up in your personal life?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because profit first is on the business side, but you can
Yeah.
also use profit first in your personal side, one of the things that I would recommend that people do is set up the habit and make it automated, start to transfer money into your investment accounts. If you know that your paydays hit on this certain amount, this certain day, then schedule the next day that money is automatically transferred into your money market accounts or your brokerage accounts. And then not only do that, but make sure it gets invested within a couple days later after it goes into the brokerage account so that you can use that compounding interest, that compounding growth on investments, right? And that internal rate of return. But make sure that you automate, create systems to build your personal wealth so that you're not thinking about it. Make it on auto draft.
Okay. And when you think about everything, right? Everything that you're teaching your clients, you're empowering them to do. What's one thing, and again, thinking of women of color, what's one thing for us to stop doing? Like if you would say, stop this one thing, and that would just totally change your life. Is there one thing for us to stop?
Stop accepting the status quo as being normal.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more. What does that look like for you?
So for me, growing up, right? I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood. Um, my high school was on academic probation. It's
Mm.
still on academic probation, like 20 something years later, still on academic probation. But that was my normal.
And you went well beyond that. As you said, you hopped on that bus and you kind of went backwards, right, in your bus drive. You went from an area of affluence to not so much. And then you said, what can I do about this? So that's you not accepting normal.
Exactly.
Awesome, awesome. So before we wrap, tell us a little bit about your book.
So Profit First for Minority Business, I call it my legacy work. It does a couple of things. One is that $1 for every book that's sold goes to Hope Worldwide, which is a 501(c)(3), and we send that dollar. So Hope Worldwide sends that money to Zimbabwe, and we put girls to school.
Nice.
So it's a scholarship fund that puts girls to school. And since 2021, when the book has launched, we have filled up a classroom of high school girls that we were seeing them off to college. And this is important because in a country like Zimbabwe, where the government pays for college, but they don't pay for your primary school, and you have the only option to get married, and in a country where there's polygamy, having that ability to go to school changes your life. But not just your life, it changes the life of your family to come in the future. So that is really important to me. Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises, again, it's more, it's changing America. I get emails regularly that this book has changed their lives. I talk about profit first, just what I talked about today, but I also talk about government contracting. That's an area that a lot of us as women of color get into. And I talk about the pros and cons, how to bid for good contracts, when to say no bid and run away from a bad contract, right? I talk about tax strategy in there also, which is also an important thing in Profit First. Again, the temptation is to cut Uncle Sam, but by also cutting yourself. We don't want that happening. So I talk about things like how do you decrease taxes while at the same time increasing your net worth? For example, if a lot of you guys are solo businesses, you may be wanting to consider a solo 401(k). And what that means is that you can put away almost $60,000 in some cases into a 401(k) account. This is a tax deduction, okay? If you're in that 37% bracket, that's like almost 40% of your taxes, your income being tax free. But at the same time, you're building your net worth for the future, but you're saving money on taxes. And so I talk about different ideas to decrease your taxes while at the same time building your net worth, all in that book, Profit First for Minority Business Enterprises.
Wow. So that solo 401(k), never heard of that. That's something interesting to consider and to look into. So what would you like to leave the audience with? So for those who are watching or listening, what would you like to leave them with?
I'm going to leave it with this. You must understand why you're doing what you're doing. You have to understand what you want to accomplish. And that's where you start. What do you want to accomplish in your life? And then build your life around that.
Love that. I love that. Well, Susanne Mariga, thank you so much for lending your voice on Women of Color in Intimate Conversation, the kickback, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.